Thank you for joining us for the Guest and Gusto Symposium, Pass the Mic Latinx Design Creatives. I'm Bernardo Coronado Guerra, SCAD staff and interior design alum. SCAD is thrilled to partner with Interior Design Magazine to celebrate Latinx creative leaders making a global impact on the design world. Leading the dialogue today is Interior Design Magazine's editor-in-chief, Cindy Allen, who continues to be one of the most influential advocates for the design profession today. Under her direction, Interior Design Magazine is constantly evolving, adopting new and inventive platforms to celebrate the design process and innovative designers, like those joining us today. Please welcome Cindy Allen.
Hey, everybody. Hey, SCAD. Hey, students. We are so excited to be with you. We're going to have an extraordinary few hours together. And first of all, look, I want you to know how hard this pandemic has hit all of us, but we think about you guys especially. And the fact that we can't be together and around the table or in the audience or giving each other hugs, it's terrible. But let's imagine, because you guys are creatives, let's imagine we're sitting together, like maybe in my living room or in Paula's living room, and try to find our spirit to get inspired today. This is a gift for you. The talent is extraordinary. Let me tell you something. All my top picks, they all said, yes, 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 we want to support this. So this really is a gift. Now, at Interior Design, we are all about great design and every color of the rainbow, honestly. But my team is a very eclectic mix and I can't do it without them. And so I wanted them just to pop in and say hello. So you get to meet some of my amazing team. Okay, so first is my assistant, Amy Torres. She is, I call her Amazing Amy because she really, really is. She's my right hand. Amy, tell everybody where you're from.
So I'm from Guatemala. Both of my parents were born and raised there, but they actually met here in Queens. And it's funny because we've become very Americanized, but still every day for dinner, we always make sure to have our tortillas. But, you know, having immigrant parents has taught me to work hard and work for what I want. And I knew that I started as an intern at SANDOW, our mother brand, ID's mother brand. And I knew I wanted to work for Cindy. And lo and behold, a few years later, I ended up being her right hand. So having my parents work hard, they've taught me, you know, just keep following your dreams and don't forget where you came from.
And you guys, I just want you to know, Amy is the first person that I ever hired right when she was sitting across the table with me. Like, I didn't make her wait, you know, like you're waiting for your boyfriend to call. I didn't like wait. I literally offered her the job. And it's exactly from what she said. Not only is she smart, super smart and humble, but it was actually the family values and how she kept talking about her family, and her father owns a small business. And I could tell that she had that kind of work ethic that I also really respect. So I love Amy. Okay, Amy, thank you for sharing. All right, next on our team in the art department is Carlos Dominguez. Carlos, hola, Carlos.
Hola, Cindy.
Tell us where you're from, Carlos.
So I was born in Bogota, Colombia, and I came to the States when I was 7 years old. So I've been here for about 20 years now, and I recently became a citizen last year. So, you know, it's been a long time coming, and it was a very important, you know, year for me. And I'm so happy to be American, but also to being Colombian, and you know, that has influenced a lot of my design work.
Yeah, and Carlos has an amazing spirit. And for any students out there, for, you know, as a leader, you want people who say yes and try and get it done no matter what. And Carlos has that spirit. He's always optimistic. He's always like team, like, is everyone okay? And we love Carlos. So thank you, Carlos, for joining.
Thank you, Cindy. Love you guys.
Love you, Carlos. Okay, another very special part of the team, our art director, Carla Lima. We have been together for a long time, Carla.
Yes, for a long time, 13 years.
13 years together.
Yes.
Carla, tell everybody where you're from.
I'm from Brazil, and I came here to do my master's degree. And I started in interior design right after I finished my master's. and they sponsored me my two work visas and my green card. And as like Carlos, I became a citizen not long ago, like 2 years ago. I became a citizen too.
She also became a mom. We're doing Zoom where she's got the most gorgeous baby Antonio on her lap, and she also teaches. So Carla's extraordinary, and she's dear in my heart. So love you, Carla. And then we have our executive editor, Annie Block. Hey, Annie, where are you? Hi, Annie.
Buenos dias, Cindy.
Yeah, buenos dias. And you wouldn't know by her name, right? But Annie, tell us a little bit about your roots.
Thanks, Cindy. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I'm first generation American on my mom's side. My mom, Beatriz, was born in Caracas, Venezuela, and she came to the States when she was 9. And like Amy said, being the child of an immigrant makes an impact on me. She has taught me to be brave and tough and hardworking and fair and kind, and to not waste anything, especially food, as my colleagues can attest to, and always lock my doors. I also was lucky enough as a child to go to Caracas many times as a child, and I still remember the lush vegetation and the beautiful vibrant colors and the dancing and the music, and all of that has helped shape my aesthetic and broaden my worldview. And working with you, Cindy, I've been able to visit Mexico City and Puerto Rico and Costa Rica and Nicaragua, and I've done stories on projects I've found there, and it's really just been such an enrichment to my life. And I think being part of a minority makes you aware of all minorities, and we're all just I think that more sensitive and that more supportive to one another. And working with Cindy at the magazine underscores all of that. Cindy not only lived in Spain, but she immediately launched into Spanish when she first met my mom. And she's just totally committed 100% to covering the very best design, no matter race, religion, background, gender, orientation. And it's just a really inspiring place to be. And
thank you, Annie. Muchísimas gracias. Yes, sí, hace mucho tiempo viví en España, but it's a long time ago, but I love Spain and I love the people. And more importantly, that we cherish everybody and every single color. And great design is great design, and that's what we're always looking for. So I just wanted you to meet some of my team on the editorial side. Thank you so much. I know it's hard to get out there and you did amazing, you guys. So thank you so much, and listen in, and let's have a great session together. So that's my team. Aren't they amazing? Don't you love them? So listen, okay, I want to introduce you to another, you would probably don't know this, but Daniel Brown, which is Danielle Brown. You'd think he was American too, so he's coming on. You all know him as Professor of Architecture and Urban Design. He's a program coordinator and a student mentor, so a lot of you probably know him. He received his Master's of Architecture from Catholic University, his Bachelor's of Design with an emphasis on interior design, which we love, from Lynn University. He was named to the International Board of Hospital Art, and it is an associate member of AIA, which is fantastic, and faculty member of AIAS. And he's going to be helping me. Hi, Danielle. How are you?
Hello, Cindy. How are you?
I'm so happy to see you. I've seen him a few times at SCAD, and I do love SCAD so much, and it means so much that we're all here today. So, Daniel, you might be popping in with questions, but definitely at the end for sure.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Well, I'm from La Paz, Bolivia, and that's where I say I'm from. I actually was born in Washington, D.C. I come from a hybrid background as well. My father is American, Oklahoma, actually, and my mother is from Bolivia, from Cochabamba. We went back when I was about 2, and then I was raised there, grew up there, and then came to the U.S. for college and have been here ever since. So Spanish is my first language, I want to say, because that's what I remember. For a long time, I tell people, your first language is what you dream in, and I keep dreaming in Spanish, so I would say that's my first language still.
That's beautiful. And, you know, and students out there, how many of you are going, oh my God, I didn't know that about the professor?
That's so funny. Yeah, that's one of the things that I have to announce at the first day of class is make sure that you understand that I know Spanish and I speak Spanish and I'm from Bolivia, because there's so many Hispanics in the class that may not know that, right?
Right. So you don't say anything bad about the professor, because
exactly.
I get it.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for asking me to be part of this today, and I'll see you soon. Okay, pop in at any time. Listen, everybody. I just want everyone to know that think of, you know, we can have this conversation throughout, and you can ask questions, ask it to the chat room, and the best questions I'll try to pop in with as we go. Okay, so I just want to explain the first hour. I was asking SCAD who the audience is going to be, so that I can make the best selections. And they told me, you know, the range of what you all can study is so broad that it made me think, hey, why don't I do sort of a double talk? One will be on the big commercial side, and the other will be an amazing designer who is owns his own studio. So that's what we're going to do. And when I say big, I went right to the top. So for big, I went to Gensler, okay, the leading design firm in the world. And there are thousands of folks working for Gensler all around the world. And they're my super pals. They're amazing. They're an amazing organization, have been unbelievable during this pandemic. And they are the #1 giant. So you may think, okay, I want to work for a big firm. What does that mean? That means you might be able to influence influencers all around the world, because Gensler works with and designs with Facebook and Amazon and Netflix and Google and Adidas and Etsy and Hulu, and the list goes on and on. Kind of amazing, right? So I'd like to introduce you to both of our speakers, and then we're going to start with Carlos. Where's Carlos? He's coming in? Is he coming in? Hi, Carlos. Oh my God. So Carlos and I have known each other for a very, very long time. He is, you know, I was talking to a really great friend at Gensler, Robin Claire Avia. She's the head of the New York region and just about everything else. And I said, you know, I'm so excited Carlos is coming on and being a leader at Gensler. And she said, no, Carlos is a senior leader at Gensler. And she said something that I wanted to share with everybody because it was kind of amazing, Carlos. Yeah, she said, he's the global design guardian for all work that Google does with Gensler. Okay, Carlos, the person that you're going to listen to right now with Google, he's reimagined their design principles that are directly shaping 2 million square feet in New York and work around the globe. And she said, and I want you to make sure to tell him that he is one of the smartest and most talented people I know. I mean, you can't get a better thing than, I mean, Carlos, you know.
Well, sometimes people like to exaggerate.
Oh geez, Louise. Well, well, I can't wait to talk to you. And on the other end of the spectrum, an amazing friend, which I have to say, I love that. So Héctor Esrawe of Esrawe Studios, you guys were both in our Giants, Giants conference that we did together, and you both met, which I love as well.
Yeah, we met in Cancun, Mexico.
Right, exactly. It's kind of interesting that you both, because we never did a conference in Cancun, so it's kind of interesting that it all works out together. But Héctor is a very special designer. You guys are going to be wowed by him. One thing as a student that you should know, that a lot of times for the magazine, we find talent because they submit for competitions. And Héctor and his studio submit for our Best of Year award that we do every year. And he flew in to meet us, and he was winning awards. And that's how some of these relationships starts. So that's very, very special to me. Héctor Héctor, we're going to do your bio after so that we can kind of connect all the dots. But you guys are in for an amazing, amazing hour. Okay, Héctor, we're going to see you later. So let's remember guys, stay on the chat. And Carlos, we'll start with you. Carlos, so you were born in Cuba, but raised in Puerto Rico. So
Yeah.
Tell me about your upbringing.
So, yeah, I was born in Cuba. Actually, I was born, a lot of people, when they meet Cubans, they think, oh, you know, you're from Havana. I'm not from Havana. I'm actually from a very small town in Cuba, but it's actually one of the 7 original villages of the in the island. It was founded in 1514, but it's also the place. It's the key place for the creation of music in Cuba. So I think people know that I love to dance, and probably that's where it comes from.
Right.
Yeah, and then
that is so true. First of all, I didn't know that, Carlos, because we've been at events together, and we always kind of end up on the dance floor.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love to dance, and I love Cuban music. But yeah, no, we left when I was 3 years old. So I left when I was very young, and then my mother. We left as part of the whole air bridge, and we came to the United States. But my mother decided to. For us to move to Puerto Rico. She wanted us to kind of grow up in a Latin culture, but we had also been, under the U.S. umbrella. And it was a fantastic decision, I think. My childhood in Puerto Rico was just incredible. And I'm very thankful for that decision she took. Oh my God, that's me.
So wait, hang on. So just, they were, I could tell, first of all, Josh, who does all the tech at SCAD, he's like unbelievable, but like we were waiting for the images to come on, and then I will like share some of them. So they're Carlos, oh my God.
That's me. That's actually me in Santi Espiritu, in my hometown in Cuba. Yeah.
And
yeah.
So, wait, hang on. There's a few more adorable. Was this like a first communion or something?
That was actually the day that I left Cuba. And when we left Cuba, you couldn't take anything out. So the only thing they let you take out was, I think it was 2 changes of clothes. And my mother, of all the things to pack, she actually got me into a suit. It's something I was never going to wear again. But those were the days of air travel, and it was. So I was all dressed up and ready.
Carlos, and you were saying that the family. The family had done well for themselves, but then you had to like leave everything behind.
Yeah, we left with nothing basically. We just with what we were wearing and 2 changes of color. Yeah.
And was that scary as a young kid, or what was that like?
Probably it probably was scary leaving everyone behind, especially we have extended families, and at that age of 3 years old, the shock probably was huge for me. I don't have a lot of memories. I actually think it was incredible for my mother, because my father died the year before we left. So my father died when I was 2. So my mother had to leave as a widow with nothing and 2 kids. Wow. And go into a new place. And,
oh my God. Yeah.
That's incredible that she really had to, it was hard. And I love the stories that she told me over time, because it really kind of teaches you about people and what people can do. And, she was an incredible woman, and, I am here today because of her.
Right.
But,
right.
Yeah.
And you were telling me a really like interesting story about ending up at the University of Puerto Rico, and what it was like there, being schooled under some amazing modernist greats, right?
Yeah. The university. So I actually graduated from high school, and I decided to come to the States. I went to Miami for 2 years to study architecture. But then after that, I was going to go to another place, and I got accepted into the University of Puerto Rico, which has an incredible reputation, the School of Architecture, which was created by Cornell. So Cornell established the curriculum, and some of the professors came from Cornell. But and that was amazing. The 2 years that I spent in Puerto Rico was an incredible, solid foundation. But the school itself, the university, had buildings that were designed by an architect that worked in Le Corbusier's office. And it had that incredible tropical architecture, that era of the 50s building. And our building was very close. The architecture school was very close to one of those buildings that I loved. That's Breezeways, and it was amazing just, being there for those 2 years.
Yeah, and you look back, because we were talking about it, right? You kind of look back and go, wow, what a blessing that was. I didn't even really know at the time at how these things shape you as a person.
Absolutely. Yeah. I always go back to the teachers that you have. And I had some incredible people in that school. Especially, I remember I had this teacher of the history of art and architecture, and she was she was so compelling. And I took, so I was there for a short window of time, but I took the classes that I was supposed to take with her, and I audited all the other classes that she taught. So I took 2 years, in 1 year I did 2 years of art history and 1 year of architecture. And it was amazing because she had an incredible way to sort of talk about that. And I remember later going to Europe and sort of tracking everything that I had learned in that class with her. And to be quite honest, the foundations that she gave me about the history of architecture were exceptional, and they really, really helped my career and even my schooling in terms of sort of having this great anchor about the precedents of architecture.
Yeah, and for the students out there also, like, you know, I've been to SCAD a few times, and the openness for everyone to learn and to follow their passion, I've always been so impressed by that. You know, 3 cheers to Paula for, you know, an unbelievable gift she's given our, you know, our students and our world really for design. But look at Carlos, like he, you know, okay, talk about overachiever, but you know, you find that and you dig in, right, Carlos? And I remember something you told me, which was that you were, you know, you were slightly insecure about speaking English, and so you compensated. So tell everybody about that.
Yeah, when I came back after the 2 years so when I went to Miami, I went there because I really wanted to learn English. Well, you know, Miami wasn't, I tell my friends is I went there only to realize that I was not learning English, and I was losing my good Spanish.
Right.
So when I went back to Ohio State, and Ohio State is when I arrived, and I did it because I wanted to be in the middle of America, right? Like, you know, and be exposed and learn English because I didn't have a very solid foundation, and I didn't speak very easily.
Yeah.
So I arrived and I realized that I had, obviously, it was a handicap. Yeah. So what I did was I compensated by actually creating the most incredible drawings in the class, because my drawings had to do all the talking that I couldn't do, like my other friends that will get up and they will start speaking, and I was blown away, but I couldn't do that. Yeah. So that was actually a really good way to force me to excel in areas that maybe other people didn't have to.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, talk about taking something that could have been a negative and turning it into a positive. We have a question. Okay, so let me see. We have a question. What are some tips for students who are transitioning into a new culture for the first time or moving into a new country? I mean, you were very, very young. So imagine, let's say that they're college age and moving in.
Sure. Well, I mean, I think that my experience at Ohio State was an example of that. It was really a culture shock. I was, in a way, it was a little horrifying, to be quite honest. But what I did was I love the lens of anthropology in work, right? So one of the things that I do is I study culture, I study behavior. So what I did was I started observing what were the things that identify the people in that community. And that gave me the opportunity to relate to them. And that was probably the most important bridge. The other thing that was interesting is that I had never been in a place that also had a very incredible, diverse community of Latin Americans. And so I had this duality where I was learning a lot about the American culture, while at the same time, I was learning a lot about all the Latinx culture. And it was the community of people that were feeling like me. They had been transferred to Ohio State, but they also were looking to sort of connect with their roots. And that also became an incredible way to sort of see the world in a much more, in a broader way. Because really, all the South Americans that were there, I had never really had that contact with Chileans and Peruvians and Colombians. And that was a really great way to prepare myself for the world in a way, because I think that notion of absorbing and being a sponge to kind of everything that's around you, it's a great thing for design, by the way.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, Carl. Somebody else is, I wanted to pull up, hang on a second, I'm gonna pull up your home. But meanwhile, someone was asking, was it hard for you, like, to grasp when you were first learning? Was it hard? Because I suppose the language barrier too.
When I finished my college, which was at Ohio State, I went straight into my master's, which was in Chicago. And you know, I remember being there on the first day of class. It was a different group. Obviously, you're a master's now degree level, which is quite different than college. And Chicago was also a different big city. And I remember being in this class with this incredible professor, and he talked for about an hour. And I remember thinking to myself, and it was a really important moment because I realized that I didn't understand a word of what he said. Not because it was the English alone, but it was sort of the level of thinking that he was sharing was something that with the language barrier was a challenge. And I told myself, I said, oh my God, I'm never going to make it. I'm never going to make it. But obviously it's one moment of fear.
Yeah.
And I was not going to give up. And then, a year later, I realized where I was. And, it's that moment in time where you can never give up. Because even though you might be telling yourself, this is not for me,
right,
it doesn't mean that you cannot do it.
Right. And do you sort of remember, because, they're asking questions about, transitioning and going into new cultures. Can you look back and say, yeah, slowly things started to make sense. As you said, don't give up. It's hard at first, but it does get better.
Yeah. I think what was interesting was that I was fascinated with the people there, but the people there were fascinated with me too. That there was actually kind of an interesting exchange.
I love that.
I thought I was the one that was benefiting from that and trying to catch up. And all of a sudden, the people that start surrounding me because they were either my classmates or other people I was meeting, they were also being very, very inquisitive about sort of my background. And then at times they start somehow, which I think is a very American thing, where they reflect certain things about what you do in a way that sort of, maybe some people can take it as they're making fun of you. But what it was a way for them to somehow realize the difference in language and how sometimes I will say something and I will crack up laughing. And then what I will start doing is I will start doing more of that because it was a way of connecting. And that's how you create a bond and a personal relationship and by the way, those friends are still my friends to this day.
Right. So there's a good message there that in many cases, and plus we're a much more open society now, wouldn't you say, Carlos? But people are, Americans, or who will be your friend are fascinated by you. Yeah. And once you can understand that, I remember because I was living in Europe for a long time and I was learning the language. I was in Italy and Spain, and I remember how much of an outsider I felt too, but they were all fascinated with me because I was just
exactly.
So but it is hard. So but don't be hard on yourself. One at a time.
And the other thing I will say to that is that sometimes people are self-conscious about their accent, and then people work hard because I said one of the best things that we have is an accent.
I know. I love your accent.
It's actually a really, really good thing. So it's funny, I haven't lost my accent even though I've been here for almost 35, 40 years now. Yeah. And I'm happy that I haven't. And it's not because I'm trying not to lose it. It's just that's the way I am.
Right.
But I have people that joke and said, when Carlos finished a presentation and he walks away, you realize that he's got an Ohio accent, but he just kind of played up his kind of Latin accent.
So embrace it, everybody.
Yeah, accent is good. Accent is really
good. Wait, I want to show this picture because this is in Chicago in the park. There he is. What was that?
So, yeah, the Millennium Park has this great fountain designed by
Anush. Isn't it Anush?
No, it's not Anush. It's Pensa. It's Pensa. Yeah, and it's got 1,000 faces. And when they were doing I was a visiting professor at the Art Institute of Chicago, so they approached me, and I'm one of the faces. And even though I've never seen myself, this is from a friend of mine that has an apartment that overlooks that. And one day he was there looking and he saw me and he took a picture and he sent it to me. So it's the Crown Fountain at Millennium Park. Yeah.
Amazing. Look what can happen to you. You could be on face in the park, which that park is amazing. I'm just going to show people you said this was your childhood home?
Yeah, this is where I was born. And I went back to my hometown for the first time in 50 years after I left. And I had in my birth certificate, there's my address. And I went there and it was an incredible thing. I mean, I can actually probably get emotional talking about it.
Yeah.
But, all the houses around them have been painted, which is very rare. But our house, it's hard to find paint in Cuba or to get paint in Cuba. So this house has never been painted. So it's probably the paint scheme that happened. So that's probably 50 years of not being painted.
Wow.
There was a lady, and I wanted to go in, but obviously And there was a lady that I saw, and I kind of went there and I said, oh, hi, you know, my name is Carlos, and I lived in this house when I was a 2-year-old, and I left, you know, 50 years ago. At first, I was afraid that she would think that I was coming back to ask for the house or whatever. And then I don't know what took over me, but I just told her, said, is it okay if I come in? And she said, oh, absolutely. And then I walked the house, and it was like, it was such a moment, because I remember having the very few pictures that I took from Cuba where I'm in that house as a baby in a little corner. And as I'm walking, I look at the corner and I know that's the corner where the picture happened. So the fact that I had that experience, that I was able to walk that house, was an incredible thing for me.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, I'm good. So we have to fast forward, because I just want to talk to you like about that all day. But I want to fast forward. Let's get into Gensler. So you are a senior leader at Gensler. Tell everybody. I'm going to just show some images while you talk about how you've excelled at the largest design firm in the world.
Sure. Well, it's a big topic.
I know.
You know, it's interesting. I've always, throughout my career, I studied architecture. I got a master's degree in architecture. I practiced architecture for 5 years. And after 5 years of being an architect, I kind of asked myself, I said, I think architecture is a lot more than what I'm doing. And I had a friend that worked for an interior architecture firm, and he said, oh, why don't you interview with us? And I said, you know what, that sounds like a great idea. I went there and interviewed, I got a job, and all of a sudden I discovered the world of interior architecture. And in a way, kind of made me realize that, to me, that was almost more architectural, because it was much more connected to the humans, right? To the people that are using the space. And through that time, I was there for several years. I did a project for a company. It was one of a kind in the world, an innovation strategy company. And because multiple things, I end up joining them, which was a really incredible thing that all my friends said, what, you're leaving architecture? You are like such a designer. We never imagined that. As I said, no, I'm doing this because I feel like I need to have this level of, I need to expose myself to something that I think is going to reshape my career. And it did, because that particular company was like a think tank. So what you had was, you had representation from all these other disciplines, and it taught me how to actually look at things in a much broader and more multidisciplinary way. And it gave me skills around that. It gave me skills to sort of think from that very anthropological lens, very user-centered. And then when I came back to design, because I did that for several years only to come back, I came back in a very different way. And to a degree, what shaped my career, especially my career at Gensler, has been by actually taking on projects where clients are asking for something that's very different, something that's different from what they have, or something that's different to envision, because it's sort of a new emerging thing. So I'm always the kind of unconventional thinker around reshaping or repositioning a way to look at something.
And you can applaud. I mean, you excelled in the firm because of that they really see the power in that talent, which you cultivated.
Yeah, I mean, I taught for 26 years at the Art Institute, and I did it out of a passion. Well, I did it for two things. Is because I do love to teach, but I also realized that I was learning so much by teaching this generation of designers for so many years. And I used to tell them on the first day of class, I said, I'm here not because you're going to take a lot out of me, it's because I'm going to take a lot from you. And I think that way to sort of being connected to the moment, in this moment in time, our culture, and by that I mean our larger kind of popular culture, and so, you know, where society is the one thing that I have done by actually translating emerging trends of culture and emerging trends of behavior. And combined with what I learned when I was in the management consulting firm around this idea of sort of looking at people and patterns of behavior, and also looking at kind of decoding all of that, and then making that sort of the foundation for changing sort of how you look at a problem and come up with something that is probably from a very different point of view.
Carlos, somebody is asking if you faced any bias when you first went into the industry, since you were still learning English, although that I think you probably had already mastered English by the time you were working at these firms, right?
Yeah, when I went to when I started working, I was already, I was already pretty fluid, or, much more fluid with the English language. And I never really experienced something like that on the workplace or the people that I work around. I might have been blind to some of that stuff. I tend to be terribly optimistic. I think that's probably why I do what I do, is because I am an extremely optimistic person, and sometimes I might not necessarily focus on that. And that might be probably for me that has saved me from some other things, but you gotta charge forward. And, we have one thing that we say at Gensler a lot, which is don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. And I think in a way that's kind of what I do is I'm just going to continue to do what I do. And if other people want to have a bias against me, then I just want to prove them that I can do what I can do. So,
that's the thing too, not like, I don't know, like in the design world, Carlos is beloved in the design world. It doesn't seem to, again, maybe it was more early on, but that doesn't seem to come up as an issue. You're working with the top leaders in all of these companies. This is Barclays that we're looking at. Do you feel any prejudice?
No, I mean, I don't feel any prejudice. I think sometimes people are looking at because my clients tend to be looking for something very different, and maybe that's kind of where it's at. If my client base needed to be maybe more established, people that are looking for that status quo, or maybe that will be an issue because they might be expecting something different. But if you have someone that what they want is reinvention, and they want sort of kind of something different, the fact that I'm different might actually be something that reinforces that idea. I don't know, but maybe that's why to me I'm not in a traditional type of accounts where they maybe expect that the designer should look like X because that's what I'm looking to have.
And also, let's 3 cheers to Gensler, because they saw who you were and really wanted to share your best talents. And I mean, I think that's the best kind of example for students, is you need to find what's the best thing about you.
Yeah, and I would say that, Gensler, of all the firms that I've worked, was the one firm when I arrived. I changed jobs frequently, right? I actually was in jobs around 3 to 5 years. So by the time I got to Gensler, on my 3rd year at Gensler, my phone started ringing with my friends asking me, where are you going to go next? And I told them, I said, this is my home. Because from the day that I arrived at Gensler, I realized that was the design firm that really reflected what I was looking for, what I was searching for. So I did work for other firms where they were less diverse, but Gensler wasn't. Gensler was so diverse from day one at both, especially not only race, but gender too, which was really important. I mean, I come from a matriarchal upbringing, right? I mean, I was raised by my mother, and Latin Americans women have a lot of power. So I've always worked really well side by side with women. And I think that was a great thing about Gensler, is the leadership at Gensler is so gender diverse that to me that felt very familiar. And I think that also is why we as a company have sort of developed a culture that we are also very diverse when it comes to even sort of a expertise and discipline. Like, we are not just a bunch of architects or a bunch of interior designers. We have people that kind of span the whole gamut. And everybody at Gensler can actually go to the very, very top. It doesn't matter what your background is. You don't have to be a designer, which, by the way, I heard from other firms when I was trying to promote really, really brilliant talent, and they will tell me, well, they're not designers. We're not going to promote. They're not architects. We're not going to promote them. And I'm like, what?
Right.
So
right.
That's not Gensler. Yeah.
Right. No, that's not. So everyone out there, if you're talented, there's a home for you at Gensler. Okay. So Carlos, I'm going to bring up Héctor, and then we're going to come back. I mean, the time is racing. I can't even believe it. But first of all, thank you so much for sharing that. And I'll come back in a little bit. Okay, Héctor, come on up. So I want to tell everybody about Héctor Esrawe, which, I am so touched by his work. And as I said, we met during competitions, and Héctor comes from Mexico City, and he graduated from the University of Ibero-Americano. I'm messing that up, Héctor, and was an industrial designer. What I love, he also was a professor, and he became design director at Centro Study House, and he created the industrial design degree. I love that. That was in 2003. He's had his own multidisciplinary firm since 2003 called Esrawe Studio, and he does everything. He does everything, and not only does he do everything, but he also collaborates in a beautiful way with so many other talented folks. But Héctor, tell us about how you grew up. Let's get started.
How are you?
Hi, I'm so happy to see you.
Hello, and hello everyone.
And you know, everyone was so excited that you were coming on, Héctor. So thank you for that. I'm
also excited. I'm thankful.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed to chat with you, and well, if we have another opportunity with the SCAD, I'm excited and happy to be here.
Thank you, sweetheart. Okay, so tell us about your upbringing.
So what you see there is my siblings. I'm the guy on the right. I come from my father was born in Lebanon. He moves to Mexico in the 50s. So I was born and raised like in downtown in Mexico. I live in this duality of being raised as a Mexican with a Lebanese family. It was not a common thing. I actually realized this duality when I was like 10, 11 years, when I started to invite friends to come to my house, and they see the tradition of the food we have, and they start to hear my father talk. And at that moment, I realized that there was something different. No, I was like living my life in everyday basis, not understanding that I have this mix of culture. So living in downtown, there's some images that you posting there.
Yeah.
Living in downtown was, I think, one of the things that define my profession and define for sure my perspective towards design or whatever I do. So the downtown of Mexico City was based on top what was called the old Tenochtitlan, which was the head of the Aztec Empire. So actually, what you have below these colonial buildings, in many occasions, are either pyramids. No, so it's a culture full of narrative. It's a culture full of history. It's a culture full of skills. It's a culture that, and I was born, and my everyday was walking around these buildings, and my everyday was walking around.
These are incredible buildings. Oh my God!
Yeah, they are amazing. So I have some stories from my parents that sometimes I got lost in the museums, and they actually find me in the chair of Pancho Villa in the Museo de la Ciudad de Mexico, no, because I was lost, and I don't know if I have any ambition at that moment, so I sit at the chair of Pancho Villa.
I love that. I love it.
Yeah, but imagine to be able to like your everyday basis is around these buildings. So besides the museums, there are pretty amazing colonial buildings, and my everyday life was between markets. No, like there are some images, or I don't know if there's an image of market. But
oh yeah, I'll get to market. Hang on.
Yeah, this is the Museo Franz Mayer, which I have my first solo exhibition at that museum. But when I was a kid, for sure, I didn't ever even consider that I would get
students. That now he has a solo exhibition there. That's incredible.
Yeah. So can you imagine, like, this is Palacio de Bellas Artes, so walking around the markets, is full of markets, is full of colors, and you have all these syncretism of a culture that was an ancient culture, and then an European, the Spaniards arrived and completely altered the essence of what Mexico was. So those contrasts, no, here you see tacos al pastor. But then in my table, no, the next day will be a plate of falafel or a plate of you can see this contrast. So for me was I think what makes me understand the world in a different conception. I'm here with all of my friends It was the first time that I went to the Formula One, so I was pretty excited. I didn't care about the cars. I was just trying to know girls and have
of course.
time with my friends.
Who wants to know girls? But
yeah, I'm the one on the left. Like that. Those are all my friends of childhood. I still have contact with many of them, and for sure there are amazing memories, and those times and those moments in that place shaped in many ways, I think, my interest and my orientation as what I want to do in life.
And did you like, was it later on that you kind of understood that the two cultures were special, that you could embrace that?
Yeah, my family was a traditional Lebanese family. My mother was born in Mexico, but she also came from a Lebanese background. But it was this mix of cultures where they were very traditional. We were a middle class family based on downtown. So yeah, it was not common in any way. And they used to work on trade. They sell and produce textiles and clothing. So I get my interest in art through my mother. No? She was always eager to understand how to visit museums and or to spend time at culture. And I think all that mix, in a way, combined, makes my interest into the creative fields grow.
And your creativity is boundless, Hector, because you do everything. So talk to the students a little bit how you were able to, start a successful business by doing all these things.
Well, I always questioned myself when I was a student of design is why Mexican design is not recognized or is not represented either in Mexico or abroad. Like I told you before, we have an amazing culture, our heritage, we have ancestral skills, history, and mostly a narrative. And well, it seems like today I'm all over the place doing a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. But the effort is the same effort. Like I try, whenever I move into one direction, I try to understand it as a whole. So for example, we are based on a methodology. No, we are a study that works in as a philosophy with multidisciplinarity, and we are based in process. No, like everything starts with the same methodology that is not to have a style, is to understand the context, the moment, the situation around a project. And it has allowed me, like I ask myself more times what I'm not going to do, that I don't put a door of what I'm going to do. Who I am as a designer or what I'm going to do, I never define that. No, I just can tell you, I don't work with cigarette brands. I don't work with, I was asked to design a store that they sell fur, animal fur, and I say I'm not going to do that. So I can tell you what I don't do. In order of what I do, I have worked with museums. I have worked with culture. I have done, like you see the exhibition, Mi Casa, Your Casa, that we had first at the High Museum. You see on display now, and it aims to bring a community, and it gets like a new perspective now with COVID, because we did with Nacho Cadena this installation like 9 years ago, and it was mostly aimed to bring the community together around culture, or to integrate the community around the museum, no, and it got immediately like a wider result that we were always expecting. No, it didn't only bring the immediate community to the museum; it bring all the community of Atlanta around.
Explain your camaraderie with others, Hector, with other talents, because you seem to have be successful. I've met so many of you, like different firms working together.
I started at a certain moment to feel tired to be the tailor, to be the one that did everything with my own. Like there was even some times that I feel my brain dry, and then I understood that stopping being a tailor I'm becoming more like an orchestra director, no? And sometimes I'm the one that plays the instrument, sometimes I direct. And I realize something that I say to my students, like at the moment you take out the ego out of the table, the only thing that it can happen is that you learn. So that becomes a philosophy. I start to collaborate with different disciplines, with other architects, with other designers, and my team now is like is a common thing at the studio. We understand multidisciplinarity as part of our essence. We understand that 1 + 1 makes 3. No, it's not only what we do together, and also is to have a different perspective. Sometimes you cannot escape of what your eye is attracted to, but at the time you have another person in the table, you can mix your intentions with other people's intentions and create something new. And that has become, I think I started doing that like 12 years ago. I can tell you I mostly started with Nacho Cadena, and now we have a really wide, we work with many teams, not only in Mexico, but abroad. We even collaborate with Gensler for headquarters in Mexico. So
guys, that's so cool. That's so cool. Yeah. But that's a great lesson for the students, which is, and you say it so easily, but it's not always that easy for people to understand the concept of collaboration. And and I love what you said, that sometimes you're the orchestra leader and sometimes you're not. But bringing your talents and your strengths to the table is what you want to do.
Yeah, like at the end of the day, for example, using an image of a query it's like a query of marble, and talking about narrative and talking about collaboration. This is with like the beginning of a collaboration with a marble company. This is the headquarters of the design center of Arca, a marble company that we start to integrate in our body of work a component that either is social or is cultural. We are working with any of our clients to integrate that factor. So we say, why to open another warehouse? Why to do one more warehouse? No, why we don't do things in a different way? So we open this spot that is a design center that allows architects in Guadalajara or designers or creatives to visit the place. It's an open door place that you can have a talk there, you can have a lecture, you can give a conference, you can give a concert, you can go there and spend time in the library. No one asks you what are you doing there, no? And for us, it's part of this philosophy of understanding the design in a different world, how we can approach to a spot and alter the immediate context. No, so this is for me collaboration. This is the possibility of understanding the world in a different way. This is a place that allows artists to exhibit, that shows you, like this is the size of the warehouse. But why should I want to go to this place to see? Well, you know why you want to go, but what makes it different? No, so we work made it in a different way, and now we have made the second one in Miami that you know about, no?
Yes. Yeah, here's some. So in Miami, it's not the same. First of all, that project won a Best of Year award and also made the cover of Interior Design. So
I'm thankful and happy for it.
Yeah, I bet you are. No, but it was super, super special. So in Miami, we have a couple of the images here. This was not the kind of space that the other one was, but you were still able to make it special with the facade. So tell everybody about the facade.
Yeah, in this case, after doing Guadalajara, this is a collaboration with Superflex Studio. That I know them naturally. Many people know them because they are artists that I admire, and we had a chance to invite them to collaborate with this project. So I decided to neutralize the expression of my involvement, and we designed a tile. We decided to approach to Wynwood, to Miami, to the neighborhood where everything is made in graffiti. And since we were selling materials to approach in a different way, and also expand the intention of ARCA being a company that promotes creativity and becomes a space of new understanding of creativity. So well, towards materials. And we invited Superflex. I designed a tile that they adapt and create this amazing facade. And they were based on the Fibonacci numbers, and also in the colors of the Mexican bills, the Mexican money. And they create this incredible facade that is called like a force of nature. And for sure, it talks about how economies define countries and cultures. So on the inside is really neutral. No, again, the strategy in this case for us was to disappear, but to create the canvas for the expression of a piece. No? So we work in a rationalized building. We did alongside Superflex the project, and is part of the amazing collaborations that I really have never dreamed of, not to be able to collaborate to a studio that is in Denmark that I admire, and now we're working together.
Héctor, so first of all, I have to say that I'm always so proud when I see some of your projects that actually make it to the States, right? Like you said, like Atlanta and now Miami. Someone was asking, what can you say to Americans, we have a question here, that are trying to start their professional career but don't know where to start or how to put themselves out there in the creative world? That's a hard question.
No, it's a hard question, and it's a thing that I have also been confronted with, and in a personal way. And what we do has a lot of, we need to know how to live with don't take it in the wrong way. No, we need to understand frustration as part of our everyday work. But it's when you overcome that frustration. No, it's a path that you need, a thing that you need to do over and over and over and over until you really get what you want. In a way, and it's not a cliche, because you are seeing now projects that we have abroad, but that was not the case 20 years ago. That was not the case even 15 years ago. No, I've been like mostly, I've been with my studio almost 30 years now, but I can tell you the first 12 or 15 years were almost under the radar. So it's not about also being known or not being known. It's about the work to have a voice on its own, and to be able, as soon as you fulfill a need and you understand clearly the context, and the project start not only to talk with the people for that specific project, but start to talk abroad, then there's a sense of something that has been developed in an honest and clear way.
Yeah, it as you say, like students are looking at this work. I'm sure they are completely in awe, but it's slow and steady, right? And you make relationships, you collaborate, things start to happen, and then the next thing happens. It's certainly not an easy fix, but a beautiful journey, right? Because you love what you're doing.
Yeah. I really, I was telling to my girlfriend a few days ago that I am really still waking up every day to enjoy my activities. No, for sure, it has not everything is happiness. No, everything has like a dark, not a dark side, but complications, and it's not as romantic as it sounds. Mm-hmm. But part of what it is, no? So I start to really give value to the moments that are the ones that construct my career, and I understand the rest as part of what allows me to grow and to evolve and to learn. I understand, and it's part, I think it's the essence of our philosophy. We're based on process. I don't believe in start to search for a result. The result is a consequence of a good process. With a good process, you can have many results.
Right, and let's just for a moment, this project Tori, which is splendid. It was opening right during COVID, which is. It
is really sad. They opened few weeks before, like 2 weeks before COVID, and it's a huge space. It can hold up to 150 guests, and now it's sad to see it with 4, 5, 6 guests. And yeah, I hope soon these guys will come back because they are a group that has been here for many years in Mexico. We have worked with them. This is the 5th restaurant that we make to them. And for me, like the project is based on a book that I love, that is In the Praise of Shadows of Tanizaki. Is how light can create the whole environment. You see on the right-hand side wall these figures like a pictograms that are the abstraction of kanjis, that in a way has a high relief. So the light.
I'm going to find another image too that you have. Yeah, that relief is like incredible. In a second.
And it's made with 2 materials. And this is just plywood. All the place is plywood and wood naturally, but well, it's wood and color. So the main structures are inspired on the armors of the samurais, the dos. They're called do, and they cover. One of them covers the chimney of the teppanyaki, and the other one is it holds the grab and go store. In a way, it marks the grab and go. So with those elements that are on the opposite sides of the restaurant, it defines the whole essence of the place. And I want something that was striking and that shows my respect for the skills and tradition of the Japanese culture. You're gonna hear me a lot saying tradition, skills, narrative, which are words that I love.
Yeah. And let's show one more, and then we'll bring Carlos back on, and we'll answer a few more questions. But this also shows like the really different scale that you work in, right, Hector?
Yeah, this is a project that I love.
I love it too.
I also did it with Nacho Cadena. And it's a brand of perfumes that aims to talk about the botanical of the Americas. There's a lesson in plants because there's no borders. Like the plants doesn't recognize borders, so it's the botanical of the Americas. And we work this project in order to create a niche fragrance that as soon as you finish to use it, it has an afterlife. So we create an object that is inspired in the geometry of nature, but it's also inspired well, this is like the table of where we exhibit, the table of Shinu, where we talk about the process, and we have some molds there, but also it's like the table of the naturist, where you can smell the different aromas and have part of the essences that compose the fragrances reflected on the expression of that table. So we believe in a holistic approach in the projects, in a 360 degrees experience to create a narrative. Like emotional design for us is really relevant, and not to forget the fact that it needs to be logical. It needs to be, again, honest. We don't use in Shinu any products that come from animal sources. And this is, again, also other piece that involves small workshops. We work a lot with artisans and workshops aiming to promote those skills. We have a tremendous artisans in Mexico. And well, this is also based in the book of In the Praise of Shadows of Tanizaki, and it's how light travels to surfaces. And this is a lamp that is made out of brass and aims to allow the light to flow around the surface.
I'm gonna wait. I just want to share these last images. I'm gonna pull up. If we could bring Carlos back, just because I cannot believe how quick everything is. Oh my God, we need like 5 hours. But look at these beautiful, glorious images. Carlos, when you see these images, don't you want to specify it for a project?
Oh, they're beautiful, really beautiful.
Yeah, they're really special. So interestingly enough, I just want to know from the two of you, polar opposites, not in terms of high quality design, but just in terms of, Hector, you've managed to create your own studio. Carlos work for a very, very big company. It's a different mindset, right? So Carlos, what do you take away? I know that you get inspired by Héctor and, completely vice versa.
Yeah, no, I mean, what I love about everything that Héctor was showing is the fact that it's all about experience and basically that human interaction and human relationship, and also the narratives that are associated with it. How do you tell stories, and how do you use the word to connect with people and deliver a message around something that matters? And I think that's ultimately what design is all about. And by the way, the power of design, why design is so important in our culture and in our society. So yeah, it's really fantastic.
I want to make sure, Danielle, can you come back? Can you come back too? And Héctor, like when you see that like Carlos is working for these like big heavyweights, it's kind of daunting to think about, right?
Well, I really many times I try to understand. I'm working now on the bigger scale projects that I have worked ever before, and I cannot imagine what is to work on that scale. For sure, it requires a structure that has a different type of rules, no? And for sure, for me as a designer, but mostly as an academic. Try to understand a structure like that, it becomes something appealing and attractive.
Yeah, for sure. I could see you collaborating with Gensler on, like you said, like on other projects where you bring that other element to it. Danielle, what do you think about what kind of questions do you have that you think the students would want to know?
I mean, just amazing work. I just wanted to. Amazing work. Thank you, both of you. It's just great to see all the inspirational images that you guys have to share with us. And I think that one thing is there one piece of advice that you could give our students as they move forward in their design career? So what would be that one kind of push that you would share with them?
I'll go first. So I will say that you should always keep in mind three important things. I will say that make no little plans. You got to think big. You always have to take the long view. I call it, think like a gardener. You can, you can beat nature, and nature works slowly for great, outcomes. And then the last one is everything you do in life, you have to do it for a higher purpose. And by the way, you can't create compartments and put designer and life separate. It's one. You got to live by these means, and you got to design by those same values and drivers.
Beautiful, beautiful. I completely agree. Héctor, what about you?
Besides what Carlos said, I really agree with it. Is just that there's no formula on how to do a studio to become a designer. I think you need to be sensitive to your context and with your moment at the place with your base. It is an exercise of being constant and to be patient and mostly to be passionate. But there's not like I'm gonna give you the 3 advices of how to become a successful designer. That doesn't exist. No, it really happens out of passion. It really happens out of commitment. It really happens out of trying to understand, mostly be honest about what surrounds you and how you can approach with your context and see what you have at hand.
And just in terms of from an editorial perspective, I mean, the one thing that I always encourage everybody, especially in a day like today when we're talking about your heritage and where you were brought up, and some of that sometimes get lost when we're talking about the business and getting a job. But it's so important for the students to hear where you come from, because they should know that their voice matters. And you're trying to, as a designer, cultivate your voice and become the original person that you should be. And that's what we look for all the time in the magazine. We're looking for originality and harness your voice. I mean, that is who you are. That is your true authentic self, are all the things that when you see what Carlos, not speaking a language, so became an amazing sketcher and everyone took notice of that. And, Héctor in that very, working in all these disciplines and allowing himself to grow in that way. That's who they are. So find out who you are.
Yeah, you say it perfect.
Well, listen, guys, first of all, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Love you guys so much. I'm sorry, we're already late. I don't know how. It's like crazy. But thank you for inspiring the students. I know you're inspired students out there, right? You're like dancing and having a good time.
Yes.
Bernardo, close us out till we're going to take a break and then come back with our emerging designers. But our big heavy hitters right here, Héctor Esrawe Studios, and Carlos Martinez from Gensler. Big love.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
This truly has been great. Really, thank you. I mean, Héctor, Carlos, Daniel, and of course, Cindy, you all have been fantastic. I'm pretty sure that all our students are thrilled. So very much thank you, thank you, thank you. And Cindy will be joining us next for the next panel as moderator as well. So now we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back in just a few. Again, muchísimas gracias a todos.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Think Tank Thursdays. My name's Tina Brennan. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Events for Metropolis. This is the 6th year for Metropolis's Think Tank series, a thought leadership program that visits firms in key markets in North America. We launched the virtual version of this program in August, visiting with firms from San Francisco. In September, we were hosted by firms from Chicago, in October by Miami, and in November by Houston. And now in December, we're in Los Angeles, which I'm in New York right now, under some snow. I wish I was in Los Angeles. Today, we are pleased to be hosted by Rapt Studio, who will be exploring lessons learned in 2020 and what we want to carry forward through the pandemic and beyond. This is our last Think Tank Thursday of 2020. This series will continue in 2021. Starting in February, we will be hosted by firms from Atlanta. We wish you happy and healthy holidays and hope you will continue to join us for these conversations in the new year. Hosting an event like this requires the support of great firms like Rapt Studio, as well as our amazing sponsors. We'd like to thank Etc., the right mix of attitude, style, and products to make your work style meet your lifestyle. GKD Metal Fabrics, aesthetics meets functionality. Grohe, designing and engineering innovative water products for bathroom solutions and kitchen fittings. Knoll Textiles, modern perspective performance textiles. Loftwall, manufacturers that bring focused spaces to life through data-driven design. Material Bank, the largest material marketplace for sampling in the architecture and interior design industry. And Versteel, a solutions provider of American-made furnishings for working and learning environments. Today's panel discussion will run approximately an hour and a half. And now I'd like to introduce today's moderator, Metropolis's Editor-in-Chief, Avi Rajagopal. Avi?
Thank you so much, Tina. And thank you all for joining us today. This is our very last Think Tank Thursday of 2020. So happy holidays, everyone. I hope you will stay with us and join us for our first Think Tank Thursday of 2021 in February. And today's discussion is absolutely appropriate for this Janus-faced moment we're in, looking back at what is a very tough year and looking forward to a year that has glimmers of hope, but still plenty of uncertainty. We are here to discuss what lessons we've learned through this year, possibly the greatest workforce experiment of all time, and what we are carrying into next year as we're looking forward to maybe some kind of return to the workplace, some kind of readjustment of our culture, some kind of new normal. And we're here talking today with a cross-section of folks who help shape that new normal. Thank you so much for joining us, all our amazing panelists. We have with us Lisa Hennessy, who is the Chief People Officer at the saving startup Happy Money. Lisa has a passion for leadership development and building and retaining high-performing teams. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today. We also have with us Noora Raj Brown, who is Senior Vice President of Communications and Brand Marketing at Goop. Goop, of course, has a cult following and creates lifestyle products and content across many channels and is a really noted and fast-growing wellness brand. Thank you so much for joining us, Noora. We also have with us Nicole Senior, who is the Director of Workplace Experience at Match Group's dating app, Tinder, with 2 decades of experience in workplace operations, facility management, and design and construction management in the tech and entertainment fields. So, Nicole, we're so glad you're bringing all that perspective for us today. Thank you so much for joining us. And last but not least, David Colillo, who is the CEO and Chief Creative Officer of Rapt Studio, our host firm for today. Thank you so much for joining us, David. The collaborators of some of Rapt's most exciting recent projects are here on the call today. So, David, in this past year, you've worked with Happy Money, with Goop, and with Match Group. And so this is going to be a fantastic discussion. I'd like to start off with Lisa. Lisa, this has been a fantastic year for Happy Money, at least. You are on pace to double your revenue this year. And I'm sure, as you've seen that growth to support it, there's been lots of recruiting and workforce engagement opportunities during a very strange year for both of those things.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what you've learned from those experiences that you're taking into next year.
It's a great question. It's a big question after this year. I'd say that some background on Happy Money. We just opened a new headquarters early March that was beautifully designed by Rapt. And we were there for 2 weeks and then we had to go fully remote. So it was a little bit of a whiplash for us. We very much, prior to the pandemic, valued face-to-face interactions, being located in the same location. Now, what I hope that we continue taking on is that distributed workforce, and that our HQ, our headquarters, is in the cloud, is what we're telling our teams now. So we're focused on recruiting the best talent, no matter where they live in the U.S. So I think that has been a big shift for us, given the experiment. We have thrived during this time, and we're really thankful for that. So just really figuring out, how do we take what was the good from this year and carry it through. So I think distributed is the first one. I also feel like, the world moves very fast, and startup life is very fast. It's high growth, fast pace. And so another thing that we've really seen benefit of is slowing down and focusing on mental health. We implemented health and wellness days to ensure that we keep that top of mind for people, especially when they're isolated at home. So I think that balance of slowing down and making sure that we have a conversation about some of those uncomfortable topics. The third thing is workplace experiences. So we have a workplace experience team. I know Nicole's going to probably speak more to that, but we've really had a shift from workplace experiences to people experiences. So how do we create moments of delight for our team members and bring them together, even though we're virtual? So anything from, virtual escape rooms to, we still did bring your kid to work day. And so I think that trying to figure out how to still have those moments that were so special in person and doing that virtually. And the other thing that's really important that kind of goes across all three is nailing virtual onboarding and nailing that virtual people experience in terms of how they engage. How do you create your culture? Our culture was very, interacted. People loved being together. And so how do we carry that in so people don't feel isolated, that they still feel like they're part of a bigger community? And I want to carry that through into next year. And our teams have really embraced all the new things. We've been experimenting all year, and they've been really giving us grace and going along with our quirky ideas. So I think those are probably the big things that we've seen in 2020.
That's amazing. I don't know how much I love the idea of the HQ and the cloud. And then to think about workplace experience in the context of that, thinking about the workplace not just as a physical space, but as as an emotional, a physical, experiential kind of environment, whether it's virtual or physical or wherever that might be. And then to think about things like wellness, to think about, onboarding, recruitment, like engagement, right? I mean, it's such a fantastic idea. And it sounds like you guys have, maybe had some fun meeting some of those challenges as well, which is fantastic. Nora, I'd love to bring you in here. Goop is a wellness brand, right? And so that idea of, people really feeling good, being comfortable, being their best selves is really the heart of Goop. And you moved into a beautiful new headquarters this year too. So how are you tying together this idea of, the place, the brand, and your people this year during, really extenuating circumstances?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's definitely been difficult. I think similar to Lisa, we were a very in-person office. We have this beautiful space that Rapt had designed for us specifically with collaboration in mind. So, lots of open spaces, lots of moments for people to sort of run into each other and have those little minutes of creativity. And, unlike Happy Money, I think we're actually really excited to all go back to the office. So we don't know when that'll be, obviously, but we definitely actually don't see our culture changing that much when in-office work is available. That being said, it's obviously been, it's been a hard year in terms of keeping culture because we used to do a lot of in-person activities. We had an in-person stand-up every Tuesday where our CEO, Gwyneth, and the other executives, we'd all talk about, all of these different things going on with the business. We were very transparent about things that were working, things that weren't. We had a yoga rooms. We'd have like yoga and Pilates classes. We did a lot of food-centered stuff. Like it was really every week there was a lot of programming, and we designed that specifically because, we wanted people to come to work and feel like they're at a little family. And obviously now doing that, and especially with us being on like Microsoft Team calls all day, we felt like creating more moments like that was actually kind of counterproductive, giving somebody something else that they sort of have to go to. So we actually went a little bit of the opposite. We installed a no meeting Fridays to try to give people time to really be able to sit and work. And if they need to go for a walk and have a minute to sort of step away from everything, we felt like that was really beneficial. We've heard great feedback there. And we've sent a lot of care packages. So we've done a lot of those surprise and delights. More often than not, they have alcohol in them, but they also have some other great things just to make like work-life balance a little bit easier. And then what we've really tried to do too is, as a brand, we shifted our corporate strategy to really go back to the core of who we are. So we're a service brand at heart. Content is the hallmark of what we do. Yes, we make incredible products, but we really try to meet the reader where she is. So our whole content strategy, we basically overhauled. Same as our merchandising strategy. We looked at everything, said, what do people actually really need? And then we applied those same learnings to our own employees. And then, really looked at it and said, okay, what are people really struggling with? What's the feedback that we can get? And we use that to create a lot of learnings. And again, it was all pretty much that people wanted individual relationships. So whether that's, understanding what their access to mental health resources were that were covered by the company, it's much more that than I think it really has been about creating these big sort of virtual Zoom happy hours. But we still do every Tuesday. We still do a stand up. We make sure that everybody really understands the state of the business. And luckily for us, e-com has been doing pretty well. And because we're so rooted in wellness, and obviously people could use a lot of wellness right now, especially on the stress reducing side. It's actually been a good year, but we're all very excited to get back to the office and get back to that kind of world.
That's fantastic. First of all, I think overall that sounds like such a sensitive and really finely tuned approach to this point in time. And it's also refreshing to hear you say, as many companies are saying now, that they really are committed to returning to the office in some form. I think different organizations are realizing that they have different cultural needs, and for some organizations, it's less important to have that mothership, and that everybody needs to return to. And for some others, it's proved to be really important. And I think that's been a learning from this year as well. I love hearing about all the wellness initiatives, and thank you for taking us through those. No meeting Fridays remains an aspiration of mine. I have a 9 a.m. tomorrow. But but it speaks to that, right? I think it speaks to sort of new cultural norms emerging in the office, in the workforce, in the work environment. And that's really incredible. So thanks so much, Noura. There's a lot that I'm sure we can unpack as we get through the rest of this discussion. Nicole, I'd love to bring you in here. I mean, clearly, workplace experience has already come up. Lisa's already said that you're going to tell us more about that. It really seems like a watershed moment, in that almost anything is possible really going forward. And depending on the type of organization, the paths might vary wildly. Tell us a little bit about what you're looking forward to with Match Group and Tinder, going into 2021. Are there any new strategies or new perspectives that you're, thinking around with, or that you're thinking of as you're going into the new year?
To that, I definitely think it's been a watershed moment for sure for us in workplace. Pretty much every part of our job has changed this year. Most teams can kind of do their job. Obviously, COVID has shifted a lot of people's day to day, but it is 100% turned what we do on its head. And what I've learned across this year is that, drastic change drives innovation. It's rooted in what it is. And for us to be successful in 2021, we're going to have to stay agile. We're going to have to be really thoughtful about how we redesign what it means to support employees and continue to evolve what a successful workplace looks like and what a successful workplace team does for the company. I think as our teams are we're swinging the pendulum every day. Some days everybody's like, yeah, we love being at home. And the next day everybody wants to get back to the office. So we're not 100% sure where we're going to land. Probably some level of a hybrid approach, but my goal and my job is to stay as agile as possible and create a program that actually functions for whatever the business program will be once we get there. And right now, I don't think anybody's 100% clear what that looks like, but I think the goal for Match Group and specifically Tinder has really been to get people back in the office if they want to be, and to create areas and environments where people can continue to collaborate and create that business synergy that's been part of the reasons why we've been so successful. So for me, I think 2021 just brings a level of flexibility, and we kind of have to throw away all the old rules about what a good workplace experience team looks like and what it does. And we just really need to lean into the actual needs that are in front of us in that moment and stay as flexible as we can to be as supportive to the leadership team who's taking on things that they've never had to take on before.
Right. I mean, that's the interesting thing is, as you say, Nicole, that last point, right? In the teams that, we are planning these workplaces for, it's not as though the type of work they're doing has just remained constant, through this year. It's not like they're doing the same work that they were doing in the office, but only now virtually, right? The nature of even a lot of the challenges that teams face has changed, right? People are, as Noura said, merchandising in new ways, producing content in new ways, reaching their audiences or customers in new ways, servicing their clients in new ways. And so it's really interesting that, very often we we maybe think about the transformation of the workplace experience this year as a, oh, it's a physical to digital, but it's also a physical to digital while the nature of the organization itself is changing. And so, thank you for driving that point home, because I think that's a really important kind of nuance here. We have to be able to support teams in the way they're doing things now, rather than, the way they maybe were doing things in January this year. So point noted. Before we move on, just a quick reminder to everyone who's joined us today. We are taking questions throughout today's discussion. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and drop them into the Q&A tab. We'll be ready for those in a few minutes. So please go ahead and get any questions that you have in for this group. David, I'd love to turn to you next. You've just heard from 3 clients who have 3 very different perspectives, I must say, right, in terms of what the future holds, or where they stand now, and how they're going to step forward. I guess I would love to hear you reflect on, your experiences working with so many different organizations that clearly have very different, cultures, very different teams, very different needs, and what have you learned? Just looking across the board, have there been any surprising insights? Has this year reinforced things that, you've been saying for years? Just what has this year felt like for you?
Well, as the designer of the group, I should say we've known the right answer all along, and we're happy that everyone else is catching up, but that's just not really the case. It's funny because at face value, it would appear that there are 3 points of view here, but it's really the same point of view, and I think it's what we've been we based our practice on for years. And it's what this year has worked to really just cement home that it's not about workplace, it's about the workforce. If you start with the people, you may or may not need a workplace. You may need different kinds of workplaces. You may need a remote solution. You may need a distributed solution. You may need an HQ, but it has to come from the workforce and how you support that group of individuals and individuals coming together as groups. So how do you support the individual in very specific requirements and have them come as their best selves to build a team that is by far greater than the sum of its parts, because everybody's showing up as their best selves. So, for us, whether we're talking about the kinds of things that Nora and Goop have programmed into the space, it's about those programs. We designed a space to support those programs, but some of those programs could potentially go virtual. They could potentially be done at home or in a remote space. So you really have to start with the people. I sound like a broken record sometimes, but it really is about how you support your people. And for us, that's always been the case. I think the past year has been this kind of forced experiment that has pushed us to the extreme. And it's funny because we'll check in with clients. We've done a lot of surveying. We've done a lot of collection of data. And depending upon whether we checked in at April or June or September or 5 minutes ago, the pendulum swings back and forth, and I can stay home and work at home forever. Oh my God, I can't wait to get the heck out of here. So to Nicole's point, a hybrid solution, in many cases is what the answer is. It's not all of this and none of this. It might be a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So, how you develop that and how you develop the hybrid and how you support that workforce with that ecosystem of solutions is really the discussion that needs to happen.
Right. Thank you so much, David. I mean, obviously, putting people first is easier said than done. And so, but that's definitely, I think, the common thread that we've heard from Lisa, Noura, and Nicole today, in terms of just centering the needs of their workforce and centering and balancing that with the needs of the brand, and kind of, putting those two things together to come up with a, magic formula, even if that's a formula for the moment. As you said, certainly this year has been a roller coaster ride, and there have been highs and lows, and our emotional states have swung with those. But I think you're right in saying that that's probably the platform. I'd love to delve a little bit more into that question of how do we put people at the center of workplace experience and workplace strategy in a moment. But I'd just love to take a minute to thank Rapt Studio for bringing us all together today. We're here talking about looking back, looking forward, workforce lessons for 2021. With Lisa Hennessy from Happy Money, Noura Raj Brown from Goop, Nicole Senior from Tinder and Match Group, and David Klulu from Rapt Studio. Again, a reminder, go ahead and start putting your questions into the Q&A tab. In the meantime, I'd love for all of us to pick up on what David said, right? So how are we centering people in our organizations? I'd love to hear if there are any particular strategies you're using to actually stay in touch with the needs of your staff through this time. Lisa, you started us off saying, how much things have changed over the course of the year. How do we keep up with that change? How are we tracking what people need, and how to best support them? I'd love to hear just from all of you what those strategies are, and then we have a few audience questions coming in.
I don't mind.
Lisa, would you like to start?
Yeah, I can start. So we have really used leverage surveys to help us get in front of folks and get a broader set of data points. We also our people and culture team is woven throughout the company. So we use the anecdotal things we're hearing from people. Our engagement survey, we've revamped and completely focused on mood and energy and how people are feeling. So there's a little bit more of a mental health side to it to make sure that we're really asking questions that dig a little deeper. And, I think that it's just, we kept the conversation going. We try, our all hands now are obviously virtual. And so we try to get people in smaller groups, leveraging breakout rooms and making sure that they have opportunities to talk with each other, to share ideas, what's working, what's not working. And just, I guess the conversation, making sure that people are feeling heard and that we're taking action on ideas and concerns.
Yeah, I think to echo what Lisa said, for us too, it's really about that dialogue and making sure that we have a strong dialogue with everyone who works at the company. So we've utilized surveys a lot as well. I mean, something that we would always talk about even before COVID was the idea that culture can't just start from the top, and it has to really be built through the middle and through the bottom as well. So we relied on that as a lot too, is this idea that, you're responsible for the culture. And if you see something that doesn't feel right, or that that's not sitting well, or you see someone who's unhappy, like, how do you surface that, right? How do you sort of work on that from where you are, bring in the right people? So a lot of it, I think, has just been having that transparency and us also going to, we're very aware, right, that this is happening, but we're also us going to our staff members and saying, what do you need? Like, we are trying to help you, but like, tell us what is going to be the best for you. Tell us what you don't want, which sometimes people are better at telling us what they don't want than what they do want. So again, I think it really just goes back to dialogue for the staff to understand that, we all really have the best intentions and that we're here to listen, even if the conversations are hard.
Yeah, it's been interesting in that we hear consistently from our clients, from our own staff, that they're missing that kind of one-on-one, in-person kind of, and in our case, we're a bunch of creatives, so we're over the drawing, sketching, or on a whiteboard. That is really missed. But in some ways, I think there's been stronger bonds that have been built. I'm speaking to a staff member who is, on a Zoom call in their bedroom. So I now know the art that's above their bed and the cat that crawls across the, there's a certain kind of veneer of the workplace that the polish has been taken off and the more real individual is put forth. And in some ways that has opened up much more honest communication, and people are more ready to speak about what they need and what's working, where they're thriving and where they're really struggling. And I think that over the last year has been a big win, across the board for us.
That's a really good point. I also think that we're all kind of experiencing this mental break at the same time. And so it has allowed us to be able to talk a lot more freely around us struggling some days we're excited to be home, some days it's really hard. And, having those conversations with execs and they're kind of feeling those same ebbs and flows, it's creating a lot more connection in terms of just the experience. Now, obviously, David's in an amazing home. He's experiencing this a lot different than some of his teammates who have 6 roommates naturally. But to be able to just have that connection moment has been super, I think, necessary for many. I do think that this has been just completely challenging for our parents and our people managers who have larger teams that they have to stay connected to, right? There's just a lot more pressure on both of those groups to perform a little bit differently within this. And, I think HR teams are doing as best they can to stay as connected with the teams that are struggling more than most. But, I think everybody's doing the best they can, being very open about what they need. And I've watched our team really rise to the occasion and create the roads that were necessary for all the edge cases that have come up in this scenario. So again, I'm really excited about what this means for how we change the narrative around what mental health in our workplace is, how we kind of talk about it and solve for issues together. And it's not as isolating as it used to be.
Nicole, you bring up something that I'd love to take a couple of minutes to explore with the group. You were talking about the challenges faced by people managers. And, as we're talking about centering the needs of people, we've been talking about employees in general, but, I'd love to focus on a couple of special groups. One is leadership, right? So people managers and people who are, taking care of other people or managing other people's, time or careers. And the other would be, something that Lisa brought up right at the beginning as well, which is, new recruits or recent recruits, like people who are still learning the culture of the organization or are new to the culture of the organization, and, how you're looking at attracting and retaining talent. So pick both, but I'd love to hear reflections on those two ends of the spectrum, the leaders as well as sort of, talent that may be new or is up and coming in the organization.
I know for us, it's been about don't stop the development for our people leaders. So we did a complete virtual leadership development training. We didn't stop that. Like we didn't let being virtual pause that. We wanted to make sure that they felt like they had the tools to be good leaders. We're continuing to help them one-on-one when they have challenges. I've really been proud of our leadership team across the company, and they've stepped up. They've set a great tone for our team members. So I think that's one thing is like we continue to invest in them to make sure they have the right tools. And then on the new hires, we had to beef up our onboarding because they can't feel our culture anymore. They can't walk into our space, that Rapt design, and feel happy money and feel our values. And so we really had to revamp it and got in some great L&D talent where they can make it more of an experience. And we are hiring a ton. And so they were coming in cohorts, which we made sure that they had touch points together and continue that on, because they've shared this onboarding experience. And it's making sure they have a buddy within their department and that they know who all the, who the IT people are and their people partner. So they feel like they have the right structure and support around them. I don't think that we've nailed it yet. I think that that's something we're still experimenting. But we definitely try to make sure that people still have a happy money experience when they start with a company.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's interesting because we're a design studio, but we're 25% strategists, and we've over the last years have taken on a broader conversation about health and wellness around workplace and retail and multifamily housing, and and it's all about experience, which is all about people, how people experience place, how they experience culture and brand and each other, and there are a lot of ways to do that. I think as it relates to workplace, I think often companies would think, well, we're pouring a lot of money into a really great workplace, and there we're done with the cultural aspect. We have a cool office, check. And really, while I truly believe that the workplace is a vessel for connection, meaningful connection, for shared stories, for people feeling like they belong to something larger than themselves. It's up to us to think about how those things happen virtually to a remote workforce, how we can develop ways to make people feel like they're part of something, no matter what tool they're using, whether they're in the HQ workplace, whether they're at home, whether they're in a remote kind of subspace. So it's up to us to develop new tools, as Lisa's talking about, to bring people in and to make sure they're feeling connected, they understand what the culture and the brand is, and that they have a meaningful way to connect to others.
I think we're ready to take a couple of audience questions here before we do a quick thank you note from me to our sponsors who make this discussion possible, Etc. and Kimball, GKD Metal Fabrics, Grohe, Knoll, Textiles, Loftwall, Material Bank, and Versteel. Thank you so much for supporting Think Tank, and thanks again to Rapt Studio for hosting us today. Our first question from Doug Seitz is, Doug was on one of our Think Tank panels recently, so hi Doug. Doug says, I would love to hear more about the HQ in the cloud. Is real estate reduction and more tech enablement a driving force? Or is it more about rethinking the cultural and behavioral implications of the workplace that is no longer a place? Please elaborate on how and what you're doing in either case. So Lisa, I think this one is directed at you, but I'd love to hear from everyone else, how you're looking at an interim virtual and physical sort of relationship. And if you are at all reconsidering real estate decisions or looking, even leaving the door open to optimize that in the future, which of those is usually a driving force? So Lisa, let's go first with you, and then we'll hear from the others too.
Okay, great. It was the driving force was actually work-life harmony. Like we've started to notice that there was this flexibility, and I'm a parent too, so I know how it is with virtual learning, but being able to get a hug from my daughter midday, and be able to have lunch with them. Like I took a lunch break with them yesterday. And so there's this harmony where when you think of balance, they're at odds already, work in your life, right? Are already at odds. There's this natural tension implied with that balance. And so we look at it more as harmony, work-life harmony, and making sure that you have that flow. And if you work better in the morning, and that's when you do your creative work, you can do that. If it's late at night, you can do that as well. So for us, it was culturally, we saw a lot of benefits. Now, some people are feeling isolated, and we're supporting them through that. But our majority of our team members have found a lot of benefit of being able to be more woven in with their communities and reducing their commutes. Like they don't have to commute. We have team members who can live anywhere, and they can live where it's convenient for them and works with their lifestyle, and not necessarily where the job is. And so for us, it was really cultural, and where we think the future of work is going. And we think that that is distributed.
I'd love to hear how the rest of you are thinking of this virtual and physical workspace balance.
Yeah, I think for Tinder Match Group, we definitely are feeling the need to get back to the office. I think the idea of synergy amongst teams and just the natural synergies that come with being in the office, we're feeling that disconnect, and we're also feeling the lack of motivation because everything is all Zoom life all day. You know, we're a company that our business is in the cloud. You know, we are an app. So our whole world is cloud-based, but the realities of what day-to-day culture is, and we have a lot of young people on our teams. I think the camaraderie is necessary, especially when you're looking at junior team members who need to learn as they grow, not having access to execs or any type of leadership, or even people one or two levels above you to ask a question, having to schedule time to do that, right? I think we're missing out on a lot of just natural learning that the office created and provides. And so I think there's definitely a different, you know, every company is seeing things very differently. It's interesting to hear everybody else's perspectives. I think there is this balance of wanting to make sure that people who have a lot more family life have the ability to continue that harmony. But I think there's also the balance of the necessities of having more business harmony. I think for me personally, it's been challenging to balance a large team and to really manage day-to-day, understanding where my coordinators are, how are they feeling. I'd have to really be thoughtful about scheduling skip level Zoom calls, and it's really different than, you know, seeing someone in the hallway having some coffee, you know, grabbing a drink after 4, you know, it's just a different type of pressure. It's a lot less pressure for them to feel like they have to have something to talk to me about when we do that, versus now, right, scheduling time with me to check in feels like a lot more pressure on them. So really, I'm feeling that disconnect, and quite honestly, it doesn't feel like people are as comfortable failing forward. You know, the idea that when you make a mistake and your boss can like give you a high five or a hug at the end, like, all right, we screwed that up, we'll try it again next time. You know, that we get less of that just naturally right now. So I think there's just this innate not wanting to fail. You don't have that natural connection that you used to. So, you know, I think for me, I'm not just because my job is really attached to the office, but just personally, to be able to enjoy the camaraderie of being together, I think is something that I'm seeing across most of the teams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it really goes back to organizational design. And, you know, for others, they probably don't have these same sort of constrictions, but, you know, we're a contextual commerce company, which basically means that, you know, unlike a traditional publisher where it's like you have your brand partnership side and you have your editorial side, like every single department that we have is really interlocked. Like our merchandisers and our buying team work really closely with our editors. They need to, you know, the products that we feature are very visceral. So it's like, if our buyer's really excited about a product, like they need to show it to the editors. And it's very different to be able to like touch and feel it and say like, look at this incredible fabric or whatever it is, versus, you know, what we're doing now, which is a lot of like, you get things in the mail, or, you know, you got a lot of photos and you're like, oh, you know, this is hard to really determine. And I think the other side of it is really that spontaneity that happens in creative atmospheres. We have a photo studio at our office. That's where we usually shoot most of our e-com and some of our editorial as well. And so much of like that magic happens in sort of those off moments, right? When you're playing around or an idea comes and you're like, let's just try this. And we obviously can't, that's really hard to do right now with the way that people are shooting, with the limited amount of staff we have on site for shoots, because obviously we're trying to make things as safe as possible. And something else that we've been doing a lot is, you know, we've been using staffers instead of models. And in some ways that's actually really great. It's worked really well for us. It's probably something that we'll continue to do. In other ways, it's not so great. I mean, I'm definitely sick of seeing my face on Goop right now. I think sometimes models have there's a reason why, but it's, that part has been difficult too, because it's like we can't really control the lighting, right? We can't as much control what this image is really going to look like when you have someone shooting themselves, or you have someone's husband who's probably not a photographer shooting them as well. So I think there's that. We just have a lot of creative limitations that we haven't figured out how to solve without going back to the office.
I think that's really interesting that, you know, the difference in your responses probably speak to, you know, the mission and the kind of objectives, and also the way the organization works, what your offering is to the public, you know, how you react, how you interact with your public, whatever that might be. And, you know, that's definitely seems like it's inflected in lots of really interesting points here. You know, Nicole talking about failure and how that's changed. That's definitely interesting. I think Nora talking about the team structure and how that's changed. That's really interesting as well. So, you know, I think any sort of relationship between the physical and the virtual is going to depend on a lot of different factors. But the one thing that occurs to me as a thought, and, you know, you can react if you'd like, we can also go to the next question. It's just a comment, is that, you know, we've spent many years figuring out how to, you know, work together in the modern office. You know, that's a 150 year development of those methods, you know, and so there's real history there, right? And with, you know, with the virtual functioning, you know, it's been a couple of decades at most, right? In terms of digital interactions in the workplace. And, you know, it seems like there's a lot more norming left to do, a lot more you know, cultural sort of equations that need to be set in a virtual sphere. And so it almost makes me wonder if we're not maybe at the very incipient start of, you know, what Lisa's already boldly stepping into, you know, the HQ and the cloud, talking, you know, thinking about a twin, you know, virtual workspace and a physical workspace. And, you know, we actually had some folks early on during this pandemic get very excited and pitch Metropolis about, you know, digital twin ideas for the workplace. And so, you know, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of thinking around that that's maybe starting to bubble up, which is super interesting.
I tried to send my avatar to this panel today, but I couldn't get it to work. So it's a little glitchy.
I do think that we need to balance post-COVID, for us going fully remote, that we're going to have intentional in-person relationship building. Right now, we can't have that because of COVID, but we will have some kind of thought around real estate and what we want that to look like. It will not be a daily office, but we are looking at, we need some kind of address, right? Where people can come together and build relationships face to face. So there is more work to do, even if people are going fully remote. And we're very aware that that's going to be our challenge in 2021 once vaccinations and people feel safe.
Right. We have a bunch. Go ahead, David.
I just think that that's absolutely right. I mean, if you think about retailers that have brick and mortar and an e-commerce presence, you know, there's a lot of pressure to develop the experiences, whether they be digital or physical, that marry, that it feels the same when I'm online that it does when I'm in person. And there are aspects of the digital experience that I can't get in person, and there are aspects of the brick and mortar that I can't get digitally. I think we need to develop tools on both sides. We need to think about the design of the workplace differently for the new reasons why you'd go to the workplace. And we need to develop tools that help to tell the story of an organization and to bring meaningful connections about in the digital realm. And you know, this year has been, we've used the term before, a watershed, in that, you know, for a lot of organizations where you had managers that thought if they weren't seeing their people, they couldn't manage them. we're over that hump now. We're 9 months in. They've figured out that can happen. So that was a big moment, and now we have to figure out if we're going HQ in the cloud, if we're going hybrid, if we're going back to the studio or office. What tools do we need to make those experiences across the board feel similar and help to tie people together around brand culture and shared stories?
Absolutely.
I'm excited that some parts of tech life just go away. And I'm hoping that this happens. This idea that like this 9 to 9, keep everybody in the office for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, get their haircuts on, in the office, that world of keeping everyone in the office, living life there all day. I'm really happy that I think this has made an instant shift in that mindset and thought process. And the idea of what workplace experience does, I think will evolve based on that not being the blueprint any longer. I think that Google model has been the blueprint for years. And now that we're not doing that, or we're not thinking about workplace experience in that way, what changes in terms of the support? What kind of support do we want to provide our employees? And if it's not getting their haircut or making sure they have some sort of gourmet breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, what are the things that we are meant to provide them to help continue to clear roadblocks in their work life? And I think that's what I'm really excited to get from our executives now. How are we redefining support for our employees?
Right. At Metropolis, we're taken to calling that the amenities arms race. It was like, what else can you pack into the office to keep people there? Our next audience question actually is very direct bearing on exactly what you brought up, David, and what you reinforced, Nicole. Athena Abral says, how will your firm support internal teams of personnel post-vaccination who would still like to be remote, whose preference is to continue to work remotely? How will you plan for this new need from a real estate standpoint? So any thoughts on that? I mean, people for whom actually the current dispensation works, it feels good for them, and they want to keep a majority of their time, if not all of their time, working virtually or remotely or in a distributed way. How is there a way to support those people?
I'll let our HR leaders start that.
I do. I think when we were weighing our options around fully remote, hybrid, the challenge we had was that there is, no one has nailed it, the hybrid, right? There's a us versus them mentality. And it doesn't mean someone can't nail it. Like, I think Tinder will, Nicole. And for us, we wanted everyone on the same playing field. And either it was we were going to be all in the office or all remote. And I think there's a way to support them, whether it's virtually or in person. We've done a lot of care packages, and we've tried to really make it more personal to them, even though we're on video. So I do think that there's a way to do it both way.
I think now the requirement's going to be on the managers to do it well. And years before, it was the idea that if you weren't in the office, a manager couldn't manage you. And now the change is, a good manager can manage anyone no matter where they are. And so that the expectation is going to be that our leadership teams level up and figure out a better way of creating more inclusivity within their teams and leveling the work appropriately, given that, and I'm excited to see how that takes shape, because there are going to be people that need to work at home. Maybe their family life requires it, or they want to live further away because their family life requires it, whatever those requirements are for them personally. It's just no longer is it acceptable to say, well, if you can't figure it out, it's not my problem. It's actually for the managers to say, how can we let you in to the team? What can we give you in terms of impact that you can do kind of off to your own? And maybe we're doing these things a little bit more collaboratively, but we've got to make sure that we keep a cohesive team structure. And I think that's going to be more on the managers now. And I'm excited to see how that takes shape.
Yeah, and just to add to what Nicole's saying, I think there's also this balance of asynchronous and synchronous work time and what works best for the team, the manager setting the tone. Some of our teams have decided they need to be all together working from 9 to 6 East Coast time, any time zone. Other teams have said 10 to 2 is when we really need to be synchronous, and then any other time. And I think that just gives people the flexibility they need if they're doing virtual school, if they're doing these different things at home. But it really, that has also been something we've put a lot of focus on that's been helpful.
David, I'd love to hear before we move on, from a workplace design point of view, is there something that we need to be thinking of in terms of, the workplace itself as in the physical environment that would help people who are not in that environment feel connected to the people who are in that environment?
I think absolutely. It's a big question because there are so many aspects of how people connect. I posed the question to our IT director as to, hey, when we return to the studio, and our philosophy is, that teams should work out when they need to be together in the studio and when they're best, at home. If they want to spend Mondays at home or Fridays at home or however they want to work that out. I posed the question, hey, Zoom is great as long as everybody's on their own screen, but the minute I'm on a screen and there's 5 people in a conference room and I have to deal with that nonsense, it no longer works. So let's not forget that. And we haven't solved that problem yet. I think we've got a long way to go to figure out all of the nuances of how we connect people remote and in the office. But I do think, from a design perspective, and here's the broken record part, if we're starting with our individual culture and what our staff needs, who wants to show up to the office, how they're going to generate those connections, and we design from that, I do think we're going to be designing spaces that are different. I don't think it's going to be lots of individual workspace where people come and sit for 9 and 10 hours a day. And frankly, a lot of the spaces that we were doing for companies that had kind of moved maybe a little more ahead than others were more focused, i.e. Goop, were more focused on spaces where people came together because that was the importance of the workspace. So I think as we move forward, we're going to see more and more, focus on how that workplace brings people together and the kinds of spaces that support that.
I also wonder if it's going to invite more indoor, outdoor, and more focus on outdoor, like the open air, making sure people aren't stuck inside for health reasons now. And so I think it'll be interesting to see how that evolves.
Yeah, my staff members in San Francisco meet in Dolores Park, to have distanced, healthy out in the fresh air. In some cases, they actually work. In other cases, it's more social. But that's absolutely, there are no rules anymore. We have to reinvent the way we think about it, which is really exhilarating, I think.
One of our attendees asks, are there workplace products that would help employees feel more welcome or safer or feel more excited about coming back to the office? And as you guys have been doing throughout, you've anticipated this thought. Outdoor spaces of furniture, bike racks for healthy commuting, ping pong tables, oh my God, high-end massage chairs for stress reduction. Please elaborate. I mean, let's think about products, but let's also think about workplace features. So I know, Nicole, Noura, you're looking at your workforce returning. David, I'm sure you're talking to a lot of clients about return to work. And Lisa, I know, eventually you're thinking about some kind of physical space, right, that people would come back to. So, what would you put in that space, right? Are there any changes for those who are going to return to the workplace they left? Are there any changes? Are there any additions? Are there any adjustments you're thinking about? And, for David, those who might be thinking of a new space, are there new features that they should be thinking about to help people feel like, they're supported in that workplace, whatever that might be?
I'm maybe going to be a little squirrely about this, but it's the same as it ever was. You have individual clients that have very specific and unique cultures. You have a group of individuals that come together, and you need to develop bespoke spaces. A place isn't built on a particular product line. Place is interwoven with story and history and the kinds of support environment that bring people together. So I don't think this is going to be answered by a product line. And I think also people are thinking about screens and how do I go back to work and stay healthy. I think the vaccine will happen, and hopefully a year from now, we will have a very different take on group health than we did a year ago. But it's not going to be about putting plastic in between us and developing COVID-friendly product. It's going to be just as it always was, developing a place that is meaningful and that brings people together.
Yeah. I mean, I fully agree with David on that. I think, as I mentioned, we do a lot of experiential programming for our employees at Goop. So I think that is something we'll continue to focus on. Obviously, the nature of that may change. I mean, we probably won't be doing hot yoga classes for anyone anytime soon in group settings, but it really is about creating those shared memories and that sense of happiness and community. I mean, we're lucky because we're in LA, so we have a great outdoor space that Rapt designed for us, and we did a lot of things out there anyway. I think for us too, again, it's not really about the product. I think it is about the idea of flexibility and efficiency, though. We were the kind of office where it was not unusual to get on a plane to go to a meeting. And I don't think that's going to happen again anytime soon. I think we're all going to be a lot more cognizant of how we use our time and how we use our time away from our families. I think that those kind of things are probably what will make the biggest change for the people who work at Goop. But when it comes to the actual office, I think we feel pretty comfortable with, the office that we created. And there was a lot of thought put into it, again, I mentioned the design and the collaboration around it. But again, the sort of specific activations and how we move forward may be a little different, but I think the themes are the same.
I agree with that. I feel like for us, the focus is going to be immediately on clean and healthy, right? Are we keeping the space clean? Are we keeping the air clean? Is it healthy? But I think, as everybody here has said, as we kind of step back from COVID world, we go right back into how does this space function for us? And everybody will be at a different place in what function looks like once we get there. But I think for me right now, the hot topics are ensuring that people feel confident that when they get back to the office, that it functions in a way that makes them feel comfortable about the cleanliness and the safety of the space. I think that for me is paramount right now.
Edie, one of our attendees asks, are you encountering any resistance to the flex or hybrid model in terms of generational adaptability? Thinking about different generations in the workplace has been a long mainstay of workplace strategy. And so, how does this interact with that, our current situation? And then how do you think the new model will support knowledge flow, team conflicts, mentoring, et cetera? We spoke a little bit about this when we talked about leadership, but just thinking about, different age groups in the office. We have recently there was some reporting around, Gen Z entering the workforce this year, and, what that'll mean for organizations in the future. So just wondering if you had started thinking about that at all in any way.
This is a really interesting question because, when I think about what Lisa said about how some of her managers have very different ideas around work and coordination hours. Some are very hard fixed 9 to 6. My mind, when you said that, went straight to, I wonder what the generational difference is in those managers. And like, are we being really thoughtful around the fact that people tend to manage to what's most comfortable for them versus being really thoughtful about putting together a program that functions for holistically across your entire org. So I'm super interested to hear what you have to say about that, Lisa.
What's interesting is the people who were more resistant were actually more of the early millennials. I don't know why, I think because it's like the relationship building. I even had a manager say, wait, but I can still relocate the person, pay for relocation. I said, no, we cannot. It's virtual. What does that mean? And so actually the adjustments we had were a little bit of a surprise to me. Were actually a surprise to me in terms of who reacted and how that played out. From the standpoint of new models, support knowledge flow, team conflicts, we've seen a decrease in team conflicts, interpersonal issues. My team is focused on higher strategic stuff now because we're not getting bogged down with, well, he did this and she did that and I didn't like that. So that has actually gone down significantly. Documentation is something that we've figured out. It needs to we've got to up our game with documentation because of that knowledge sharing and support. Mentoring, I think, is something that's really important, but needs to still be organic. So we're still trying to figure out, how do you get that organic? You can't just force someone and say, hey, David and Lisa, you are now mentor, mentee, go do that. It's a little bit more personal than that. So I think, yeah.
Edie, who asked the question, Lisa's laughing because Edie, who asked the question, says, hey, I'm an early millennial asking that question, and I take objection. Edie, I'm an early millennial too, and I completely see what Lisa's saying.
Yeah, I did not say all early millennials. I just said that the people who have surprisingly been early millennials.
Yeah, we've actually seen kind of the reverse of what I would have initially thought, but makes sense when you actually look at it, in that it is the younger staff that are anxious to get back to the office, and I think the older individuals who have kind of gone through all of that, who have a more settled life at home, who aren't looking for an expanded social interaction from their work life, that are more comfortable with staying remote longer. Even though you might initially say, oh, well, the older individuals may be less comfortable with the technology. It's been the reverse for us. So.
David asks, do the things we've learned or been forced to realize this year about work and workplace suggest any changes in university curriculums as to what we teach students about design or teach students about HR, thinking about employee management, etc.? I mean, or do the changes this year, think about your own fields, do the changes this year amount to maybe somebody new coming up in your field, whether it's in marketing and brand, whether it's in workplace experience, whether it's in HR, or whether it's in design? Does this year mean that they will have to learn new skills? I mean, are we at that level of change?
I'll jump in here. I don't think this year teaches us anything new about what we should be teaching young designers, and that is that no discipline sits in exclusion of everything else around it. So, architects or interior designers often think about designing the thing. And I think, a long time ago, and it's what Rapt is built on, we understand that everything is interwoven. You can't think about interpersonal relationships without thinking about place, without thinking about technology, and how all those things marry to each other. So if I were to say anything about curriculum, we need to be training more well-rounded, more curious, more empathetic designers.
I mean, from the HR standpoint, there needs to be more of a focus on change agility. How do you develop that? How do you hire for that? Because that is the only thing guaranteed, as we figured out in 2020, is that there's change will always be a constant. And so we do need people who can adapt and pivot and be nimble. So I think that's one thing that I think should be a higher focus. And then the second thing is mental health. How do you incorporate that into workplace practices, into HR policies and procedures? Like, how do you really do that well? And then probably the third would be something around technology, and how do you leverage that for people experiences when you're in an organization?
I kind of agree. I don't think that the actual cause or of what we're all trying to do from a brand perspective is going to be that different from 2020. I do think the change agility is important. I think that this idea of like, how do you, there's that like quote that I can't remember who said it, but it's like, always make a crisis work for you, or never waste a good crisis, or something like that. And that's something that, like, I grew up in PR, and so we would tell ourselves that a lot sometimes just to make ourselves feel better, I think. But, I think that is something that's always important to keep in mind, is that this is really overwhelming. The change is scary, but like, what are the good things that we can take from it? What are the learnings that we can then apply to the business to make it more efficient and to make it a better place to work, all of those things.
I was going to go to my last question, but we had a quick question come in, and I'd love to take it real quick. Natasha Aurora says, Noura, Winston Churchill. So Winston Churchill was the one who said that.
Thank
Never
you.
let a good crisis go to waste.
Kim Kardashian.
Melissa Drake asks, company events and summits are typically a big part of corporate culture. Do you see large events taking a smaller role in your culture in the future, or do you see them returning? Maybe Nicole, would you like to speak to that?
I think that everyone longs to get back to their concerts and all the things, those big camaraderie things. And I can't see us going. I don't see a world when, once we get a vaccine and people feel more comfortable and safe being outside, that we don't want to get together for the holidays, that we don't want to have the big summer events. I think we all are yearning for that level of connection, that level of celebration of our wins together. So, I think we're actually going to go into a space where we're going to do it bigger after a while, until we get back to it feeling like it's more of a normal thing. So, I think of, when you think of like the 20s turned into this like big party and into the 30s, and I can see why, right? When you were like held up in the house for 2-3 years, it turns into like, once you can be free. I'm super excited to see what happens and how that kind of evolves our outdoor events and our bigger events. So I'm real optimistic that once everything goes back to normal, that we'll be able to do it bigger and better.
Yeah, it'll just be like Great Gatsby, but in the new millennium.
Yeah. That's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for too.
It's a good question. For us, we actually are thinking about real estate in the way of more of a retreat center to enable our teams to come together for larger events and summits. We already have all these great ideas that we're excited, but it will be post-COVID, to Nicole's point. But we definitely, that for us is going to be a huge culture builder because we're remote. And so that's how we're actually going to be, we're leveraging those more after COVID.
I love that. Even the HQ in the cloud specifically actually needs bigger events. So that's really interesting. I love that.
You gotta have a mix.
Yeah. I'd love to have one last question for all of you. Obviously, we've had some amazing hope this past, couple of weeks, and the first vaccinations rolling out here in the United States. So we know that, at some point next year, at least the broader public health, issues will probably be mitigated to some extent. I'd love to hear from each of you, take a minute and think about sort of maybe what you're looking forward to, in 2021 for that new normal. What are you most excited about returning to, or what new things are you most excited about in a post-pandemic, post-vaccine world? And while you're thinking of that, a quick last thank you to Rapt Studio for bringing all of us here today. And one last thank you to also our sponsors for today's program, Etc. and Kimball, GKD Metal Fabrics, Grohe, Knoll Textiles, Loftwall, Material Bank, and Versteel for making this conversation possible. So last thoughts on what you're looking forward to in a post-vaccine world. And any of you go first, please.
I'll start. I think I'm looking forward to more human connection with people that I spend 8 to 10 hours of Zoom life on a day. I'm excited to go back to, hugging my coworkers' newborn when they first have them. I feel like we've lost that personal connection with so many of my coworkers. So I'm excited to get back to some level of normalcy there. So that to me is my 2021 wish is, things kind of calm down and, that more social, emotional part of our jobs can come back to life.
Gosh, there's so many things. One thing I think I'm really looking forward to from a work perspective is, we do a lot of really high touch events at Goop. That's something that we're really known for. We do these big, beautiful summits. We do these gorgeous dinners. And every time we do it, I think it's a really beautiful thing especially for new employees who haven't seen it before. And they walk in and they really see the brand come to life in this incredibly visceral way. And it's, I think those moments are really rewarding for people, not just from like seeing it and also understanding, everything that we're about, but also working together to create these big, crazy events and moments. And that feeling of satisfaction, that feeling of, celebrating together after being like, we did it. Like that stuff is really hard to do right now. And so that camaraderie is something that I'm really looking forward to feeling that again, to feeling like, we're all in it together and we accomplished a goal.
For me, 2020 changed our company. I think for the better. We're more human. We've never been more happy money and living our values than we are today. And it's changed us as individuals. And so we want to embrace that and build on that next year. And so I'm really excited to see what that brings up from an innovation standpoint. And I just want to kill it at remote work and be innovative and have great experiences for our team members and set some new standards. So that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, so I'm certainly excited about getting back to the studio and being able to sit in a room with folks and just throw darts at something and really collaborate in a way that I'm sorry I just can't do. And we're very creative, very very tactile in what we do, and sometimes you need to write strategies across a whiteboard in the room and really just kind of connect with people in a way that you can't virtually. On the other side of that, I'm also really anxious to see how all this shakes out. From a client perspective, we've had a little bit of paralysis. 2020 started with a whirlwind, and it was this whole, well, we'll be back by June or July, and then that it set in. There was like, oh, we'll be back by the fall, and then by the time the fall got here, it's like, well, we're never going back. I don't even know how to think about this anymore. I just have to focus on how we can do what we're doing right now the best possible way. And I think all of that has been incredible learnings and gathering. And I think now we're at a point where our clients are starting to kind of shake free of the the fuzz and can really think about what the future looks like and how we think about coming back to a place in a new reality, and really start to design that employee experience from soup to nuts, and how we can support them in a way that might have workplace involved, might be cloud-based. But I'm just anxious to engage in that conversation, because it's been a little bit of kind of, let's just wait to see where this thing goes. It's time to start talking again.
I just love that, we're back to a place of real optimism, and real hope for next year. I think everything that you guys have said in this last round, I think reflects all the lessons that you guys spoke about throughout this conversation, right? Putting people first, putting that connection with people first, I think that's really important. I think really being comfortable with either the virtual work arena or the physical work arena or the hybrid, whatever it is that makes sense for the organization, but really owning it, really, working at it, really making sure that we're fine tuning every tool we have to address the needs of the workforce. That's really important. I think, thinking about both individuals and then teams, and really, thinking at those two levels. We had a great discussion about leadership and about new talent as well. And so, how those two groups who tend to be very, who tend to have special needs within a large organization or a small organization, how they operate in the new normal, whether it's virtual or physical or hybrid. I think also understanding that certain work functions just don't translate to a virtual space, whereas some work functions probably have translated a little too well and probably don't need to go back to what they used to be. And so we're going to see all of those things. I know it feels unsatisfying to end this year on a everything can happen based on who you are kind of conclusion, but that's where we're at, right? And that's also been, I think, a big lesson this year, is that there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution for this time. And if anything, I think this year has forced organizations to look inward, to really inspect what they're doing and to understand what makes them unique and to build for that. So that's something I heard reflected in all your comments here. So thank you all so much, David, Lisa, Nicole, Noura, for taking the time off today. I really appreciate it. This has been an absolutely wonderful discussion. Thank you to everyone who's tuned in, who listened to us, who asked questions. We love hearing from you, and we thank you for your engagement with today's discussion. But also, I know many of you have been attendees at our past discussions, so I thank you for your engagement with the Think Tank series. This is our last Think Tank Thursday of the year, so it feels appropriate to say it at this juncture. This Think Tank program is really close to our heart at Metropolis, because it is the way through which we surface the thinking of firms, great firms like Rapt Studio, who are really leaders in this industry, as well as their clients, who are often trailblazers in their own right. And so, we really appreciate Rapt Studio, as well as all the firms who have hosted us this year, for really giving us the opportunity to kind of take a peek into their minds, to learn something from them. It's been really generous of you, and I really, really, really appreciate it. Thanks also to our sponsors who supported this year's programs, etc. and Kimball, GKD Metal Fabrics, Grohe, Knoll, Textiles, Loftwall, Material Bank, Versteel. Thank you so much for being part of this program. I really appreciate it. I hope I will see all of you in 2021 in some form or the other, whether virtually or physically. I look forward to connecting with all of you again. Think Tank Thursdays picks up again February next year with firms in Atlanta. Please look out on our website, metropolismac.com/think tank for further details on that. Again, thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you for spending this time. I really appreciate it. I hope all of you have a wonderful holiday season, and I hope we have a great new year in store in 2021. Here's to good health in the new year. Here's to workplace satisfaction and happiness in life in general. Thank you all so much, and have a great night.
Thanks, Avi.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.